Now, any questions that you'd like to ask us about the specific document?
Yeah, words are one thing, actions are quite another.
Absolutely. Actions speak louder than words, which is why in the detail coming in the next 3 months we will be putting guidelines and milestones in so that we can measure success, what success will look like, and who's going to take responsibility for delivering it. So, yeah, absolutely right, Adrian. It's important that we don't just do a nice glossy-ish document, everyone says well done, and then we disappear and nothing happens. We are really committed to ensuring that this happens, and that as a result we will be coming up with like a roadmap over the coming months.
Does that mean then that there's going to be a level of accountability on this? Because people often, you know, are they being told that it's words at this stage, they want to see action. If they don't see that, is someone going to be held accountable?
Yeah, very much so. So my title is the Minister for Policy and Reform, and working with the Chief Minister, I chair the Council of Ministers subcommittees and have responsibility for the officers who are empowered and responsible and thus accountable to deliver this. And that's the challenge I've got. We're trying to do something to make the maximum use of the next 9 months in our first year of administration. We've taken the 100 days to set ourselves a good foundation to maximise the use of that first year, and thereafter we've laid out what it is we're going to have to achieve in a longer time scale. So yes, people are accountable. Ultimately it's the Chief and I who've got to manage Cabinet Office, to work with other departments, to work with people outside government, to actually identify what the real issues that need tackling now and to tackle them with legislation, with resources, with policies.
Sorry, just to pick up one point there from that. You mentioned legislation there. We can see what's set out in this programme. Notoriously, though, changing legislation is difficult and slow on the Isle of Man. What's going to be different with this? Is there any plans in place to speed some of this stuff up?
Yeah, the Attorney General's chamber is now fully staffed. We hope, obviously, things will get thrown at us and we'll be able to react to what's thrown at us. But this is the right amount of legislation to be able to tackle in 12 months. We've sketched what we're trying to prepare for the next 12 months, and we've taken a sort of year zero approach to thereafter. We're now making people bid for legislation that's going to appear in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And yes, we acknowledge the point that you make. We need to actually make legislation that we really need to make things better for people, and that's the approach we're taking.
How much of it is completely new? Because the answer to that might be not a huge amount, because the last government wanted to do the good things that you want to do, but I mean things like nurture Manx culture and arts and grow the visitor economy. I imagine that they were in an agenda for change. I'm sure they were. Every government would want to do those things. Is there some... I haven't been all the way through it. I have seen a couple of things that aren't in it, which I'll mention in another question, but are there some brand new things in here?
Yeah, well, Chris has drafted this, so I'll let him go through it in the main detail. But yeah, there are quite a few new issues in it. Obviously, balancing your books and being financially responsible is something all governments should want to achieve. So yes, it's not a case of reinventing the wheel here, but we are clearly setting our stall on where we're going to be going, and how we see it and how we'll be measured by it. So it's, Chris, you want to give the...
Okay, so if we just start with the strategic objectives and if identified initially, balancing the books and financially responsible government, they are different. What we're trying to do is actually to go through the services that government provides and prioritise them. And we're not just talking about smarter, simpler, smaller government as objectives. We're actually trying to put in place in this year mechanisms and processes by which we will engage with people about what we will do and what we won't do, and how we'll do things and how it will be significantly different. So, at first sight, this document might seem more of the same, but I can assure you it isn't. And once people get into reading it, you'll see the processes described already, whereby we are actually reflecting on the nature of government and what a financially responsible government actually means. To take the other two objectives, an inclusive and caring society is different from protect the vulnerable. It means that we've got to finally address the means testing issue and link that to needs testing and link that to the benefit system and housing and all the things that people have wanted us to tackle from some time. And this document describes the process by which we will do that. And previously there was just a statement that we wanted to grow the economy. We've now described the island that we want. We want an island of enterprise and opportunity, and that's a bit different. So now we've asked everybody to come up with the sort of actions that will, which will need to be put in place in the next year to make sure that we really are an island of enterprise and opportunity, and to actually understand a bit more about the growth that we've had in the past and how we can maximise the use of growth and also maximise the potential for our island to have enough growth in a period in which the world is suffering from inadequate growth.
Yeah, if I can just expand on that, things like, this isn't a dig at the previous administration, I was part of it, but things like protect the vulnerable. Who is vulnerable? At some stage, all of us will be vulnerable, whether we have a mental health issue, whether we're taken ill. So it doesn't necessarily mean financially vulnerable. So I think coming with an inclusive and caring society better covers what we're about, really, rather than just putting it into the well-used word of vulnerability.
You say here you have mostly support, but you reckon that some people won't go with you. You know, whilst you're able to put that in here, you reckon that some people will not be able to take this on board. Was there any argument within Council of Ministers on this, or are you still having an amazing ride still and keeping everyone on board?
Unanimous Council of Ministers support, Paul. Yeah, it's we're working as a team, and I put that phrase in because, as more as a generalistic, people on the Isle of Man, I would be disappointed if we didn't get virtually 100% majority until you can never take it for granted. But we haven't just done this as a Council of Ministers project. We have brought in all of Tynwald members and listened to them. We put our views forward, we've listened to them, and then we've incorporated their concerns and what they would like to see happen as part of this document. So we are hopeful that when we have a debate in Tynwald that we get well, I would love to see 100% support, but if one or two feel they can't support it, well, it would be disappointing, but the Council of Ministers is 100% unanimous with this.
There's things in here, such as rates reform. The last administration and the administration before that tried desperately to grapple with, got nowhere. What makes you think that this administration will make any further progress?
Well, I think what we've done this time is we've put, as I alluded to earlier, we've put in milestones. We're going to have this debated every year, so we can be judged by what we're saying we're going to do in that time frame. So I think this is the first time we've set targets on when we're going to achieve things, and having an annual debate on government's 5-year strategy is something that we're committed to. So that will enable the press, backbenchers to hold us, and the public to hold us to account. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Chris?
Just to add to the specifics of the rates question, which is, I think we've acknowledged that that's a 5-year project, and it's also a project that comes on the back of not just one administration, but 100 years of administrations trying to tackle some of the local government rates issues. So we've acknowledged that if we are going to achieve something, we've got to make substantial progress in the first 6 months, and so that's how we've designed our work stream. The rates issue is profoundly different now, because more than half of the money that's collected based on rateable values actually goes to water and sewerage. It's no longer just a question of local authorities. So you watch that space, but in the next 6 months, the public and stakeholders will be engaged in thinking what that means. You'll see also that now it's a Cabinet Office Treasury initiative to tackle rates, and that's something that permeates a lot through this document. We've got a Cabinet Office rate system on cost improvement and change in reform, and we are trying to work closely from this part of government with the other departments, and then beyond that with the other stakeholders to see if we can tackle some perennial issues, because that's the gist of your question.
Local government reform in there, or not?
Local government reform is mentioned in there. We made some good progress in rebuilding confidence and mutual trust and respect between the different entities involved, and we hope to relaunch regeneration initiatives and local government transition initiatives collaboratively and cooperatively beyond government with local authorities and other stakeholders involved. We've still got serious financial issues to address. We're short structurally of tens of millions, and we are looking everywhere to find £1 million here or there, and so therefore we have to look at £60 million collected and spent by local authorities as part of that process, because 60 million is 6% of the total that we spend in government. It's a large amount of money.
You mentioned finances there. Obviously there's lots of things in here that will require more money. Where's that money going to come from? How are we going to get some of the things that are in this document? Where's that funding going to come from?
Well, before Chris comes in and answers it in detail, I think it's about prioritising. I think historically government departments have gone off individually to do their own thing going forward and reacting to certain scenarios. We are looking at we have a 5-year plan, and all government departments will be working to that plan, and there will be a prioritisation of finances towards those achievements. So I don't necessarily think it will be a case of throwing money at it. Clearly we haven't got a lot of money to throw at things. We're still balancing our economy, but we're not far off it, and we come from a tremendous amount of, I'm not saying confidence, but there's been good growth in the economy. We've carried on growing despite many of our competitors and neighbours who've gone into negative growth or just ticking over. So I think we should take that on board, that whilst the economy is good, we haven't got tens of millions of pounds to additional funding to throw at this.
And we've got 11.1 million extra you have to throw at the health department. So that just shows the scale of the problem.
Just to jump in, I mean, you've got us at a slight disadvantage because we can't talk to you about everything that we know and agree, because this is the first of 3 documents that we will have within the next quarter, and we really put us on the spot next month, or when with the Treasury Minister sitting alongside us, or in April when we've got all the departmental members, because next month we'll have the budget, which is very much interlocked with this document. And 2 months afterwards, we'll have the service level agreements with the departments, and we'll have departmental members who'll be able to fully answer your question in detail, and we'll be working collaboratively with them. So we know more than you, but we can't.
If we say certain things now, obviously we'll be giving part of the Treasury Minister's budget speech away.
But can you see why, from the public's point of view? I mean, in here it says you want to roll out the mental health strategy. Other things concerning the health department, as Adrian said, next week they're going to ask for £11 million. Just to keep running services as normal up to March. I think it's the second year in a row that there's been that overspend. So something isn't correlating, and I guess the public will see that there's all these initiatives and things that we want to do, but we haven't got the money as it is at the moment.
Well, I think take the budget with this document, and you'll see a clear pathway forward for it. Obviously, we're launching this now. In this Tynwald, in January Tynwald, the budget will be in February, and I think after that you'll be able to see how this document will work. The budget has been worked on elements of this document. And we had prepared, Treasury had known about the overspend in health and social care from day one. It wasn't suddenly, in the last few months before the budget we've got an overspend. They were more than aware that in health and social care, especially Nobles Hospital, was spending more than it had been allocated for, and I think that will be addressed.
So, to go back to answer your very good question, in terms of the process we've gone through, we started the preparation of this document by meetings with all of the departments with 4 people involved. That was the Director of Change and Reform and the Chief Financial Officer and the Minister of Treasury and the Minister of Policy and Reform. And we went round and had open, frank discussions November, December time that informed this document. And from now on, through the next 3 months, we will be putting in place teams from the departments, but also involving Treasury and Cabinet Office to actually assess services, assess the delivery of services, ask all the questions that need to be asked early in this administration. So by the budget, the one after this one, we'll have the real Quayle administration financial priorities after we've fully completed the analysis that's fully described in here. And I just wanted you to really understand that the budget is well developed, but it's under purdah at the minute, and it's here now because this informed the budget. Something has to come first, and that we'll have a more complete conversation once the Treasury Minister's here, once the departmental members are here and the budget's available, and also the service agreements thereafter.
These are all objectives and mission statements, so obviously some apply to this department, some to another. Is there any attempt in this to sort of avoid the silo thinking of government, so that some objectives could not necessarily just be neatly put with such a department, but actually can be achieved by several departments. And I think your predecessor, Chris, had ideas about vertical and horizontal.
Yeah, well, we have subcommittees effectively where certain departments merge together to work on individual strategies, and Chris has had meetings with all of them.
Yeah.
You might want to expand on that to get us on this journey.
We have 4 Council of Ministers subcommittees, 3 of which I chair, so that's probably the most important part of my job, leaving aside chairing Public Services Commission and the Public Services Pensions Authority and a few other things. And what the Chief Minister has wanted to make clear to everybody is that yes, education and health and social care and home affairs, which are all in a relatively similar area, do have to work together, and the Council of Ministers expects them to work together. Beyond that, they have to think through the implications for infrastructure and for Treasury and for general government policy, and that's the I suppose the vehicle and the mechanism where those discussions are going to take place. So officers will confirm that in some of those meetings silo mentality has come up, but I think you've noticed from the gist of your question that we haven't got these objectives assigned to departments, and we've deliberately done that. We've forced people to come up with government's objectives. It's not the Chief Minister who's only signed this, it's not a section signed by the Minister of Education alone. This whole document is signed by everybody, and we have the beginnings of a system we believe that will work to actually make real progress this year and thereafter to solve the real issues that need tackling now.
Yeah. I think in answer to your question, Paul, earlier on, is this am I enjoying the unanimity of Council of Ministers? I think this will be the first policy document which shows it's not a forward by the Chief Minister of what's going to happen. This is the Council of Ministers who've done this, and we've all signed up to it, all in agreement. So every minister has signed the document and has agreed this strategy.
But discussion took place, arguments, heated debates.
No heated debate. No, that this has been done by involving everyone, Paul, from day one. Instead of me going off and saying this is how it's going to be, and then having a few people chip away wanting their bits in, I involved everyone from day one, and I think that's been the secret of our success. I don't know if you want to expand on that, Chris.
Well, I'll expand, and eventually we're all friends, but I just wanted to add to that some of the lower level meetings, some heads did have to be knocked together by politicians involved, officers' heads, politicians' heads, and it's not always been completely at the time it didn't always feel harmonious, but the outcome was harmonious. And using that word outcome is a point I wanted to make, which is that what you've got here is you've got a description of the outcomes. Everything that says we will is an outcome. We're describing what we want our island and our society and our international relationships to be like in 5 years' time. That's all that the last government had managed by January 2013, and we've more or less done that by November, and we finalised it in January 2017. In this document, we've also gone further because we've got a well thought through 12-month legislative programme, and we've got the actions for the first 12 months, and we are now really going to build on that with the help of officers and with the help of political colleagues and with the help of people outside government to put in place strategies for telecoms or strategies for mental health. We didn't have, to go back to a point that the radio asked a while back, we didn't actually have a culture and arts and heritage strategy integrated with heritage and tourism before. We will have one for 5 years shortly, and so that's a qualitative difference from where we are previously. So very much so, the Chief Minister has managed to engender the feeling that after we've had our differences and our things, we will come together, and I think everybody's accepted that. So, in that sense, it's been harmonious completely. But I can assure you, there's been tensions behind there, and people having to think through what's really important with them and what it is they're really trying to achieve underneath it all.
So there's obviously political support. Do you expect the public to fully get behind this and buy into it? What's your feeling about how the public will react to this document?
Well, I would hope they would get behind it. There's not long ago been a general election. All the political members who have signed up to this have been on the doorstep listening to the concerns of the public, and we've taken on board their concerns. And this is the document that we've come up with. come up with to take the island forward.
I completely agree, and just want to go back to the harmony and the lack of harmony argument. You know, what it's like here is a swan. You know, a swan is very harmonious on the top, but there has to be lots of activity underneath that's pretty furious to get the swan to be pretty elegant, harmonious looking on the surface, and that's what it's been like. And now I want to make sure that the public properly engage with this. In other words, it's not easy to tackle the Nobles Hospital health and care issue. It's going to involve understanding fully what the issues are, and how it's to do with staffing, and it's to do with the island as a place to work rather than other places to work, and it's to do with how money is raised, and it's to do with the starting point where we are with reviews and that sort of thing. So the public's going to have to accept that there are issues that need to be tackled by politicians in a bold way. Likewise with pensions, we have made very serious progress in the last couple of years with all three types of pensions, with public sector pensions, with state pensions, and we're beginning to make progress with private pensions. People are not getting that. You know, it's not down to the level now whereby this affects me for every generation, but we are going to have a very, very serious discussion about pensions in the next 12 months. We're going to have that discussion. But I really do hope that the public is on our side, and the public understands that if we lay it all out, warts and all, the public will understand that the Chief Minister, his Council of Ministers, his officers are actually, you know, making options available with information to help people choose between options, and that they'll engage on that basis.
I think the public in general are tired and fed up with the politics of argument. You know, they see enough of it in Westminster, and I think if we can, where possible, go out of our way to work together as a team. Obviously, it doesn't make very good press if there's no fights amongst politicians, and I'm sure on the horizon that there will be disagreements and differences of opinion. And I don't expect everything that we as a Council of Ministers come up with in Tynwald to be supported by some of the backbenchers. But I think on the whole, we're all in agreement that we want what's right and what's best for the people of the Isle of Man.
How's this going to stop a Vision 9 happening again? You know, I mean, you've got to have government working together, let alone everybody else. And it's clearly been a mishmash, to say the least, in the best way I can put it. You know, it hasn't been a very exciting and good start for your administration. You might blame it on the old one, but is all this loving, is this going to continue, and is this what it's all about, basically?
Well, I think you've got to be open and frank. If something like, you're never going to stop guaranteed. I can't sit here and guarantee that a Vision 9 type event will not happen again, but I think we have to ensure that we have procedures in place to try and reduce the percentage of it happening again, but have open and frank government. And it's been referred to a committee for investigation, the Economic Policy Review Committee chaired by Mike Coleman, are investigating it. That was referred to by the Minister himself of the Department of Economic Development. And I think as long as we hold our hands up and we're frank with the public and have things investigated and don't sweep things under the carpet, then that's got to be a good formula going forward.
Have you still got confidence in all your ministers?
Yes.
100%?
Mm-hmm. Openness and honesty about policy changes would be very helpful. I'm thinking of the state pensions changes. And I think it's like pulling hen's teeth to find out exactly who and to what extent people would be affected by the changes to the state pensions. Because we came away from the press conference none the wiser that there would be significant changes, but everybody after a certain year would be worse off because of these changes. And I think honesty and openness is certainly required in these big policy reforms. Is that a commitment going forward?
Well, it is, and I think I've been a minister for 2.5 years before I was made Chief Minister, and I don't think any of you can accuse me of shying away from doing the interviews that I've done. I know not all ministers did give interviews to the press. You can't accuse me of not being one of them. And my style has always been, you know, honesty is the best policy. You can get on with things then if you're not having to worry about what you've said. So, yeah, it's a strategy that, whether you think that's a naive politician saying honesty is the best policy, but it's a strategy that I think we should be continuously working on.
A few things I've got to pick up here, if I could. When are you going to Tynwald with with policy changes on legacy funding for exec pensions. Have you got a date for that?
Right, have you got a date yet, Chris?
In February, Tynwald will be taking a scheme to finish off the work undertaken in an internal member consultation over the last month or so. So that's to do with an increase in contributions from members of the scheme and a reduction in benefits. I believe it was July 2016 when we had the last debate in Tynwald about that, and at that time it was quite clear we separated out the legacy funding issue from that part of the work, and I would expect to be able to tell you more about that with my PSPA hat on, in conjunction with the Treasury Minister, around and just after the time of the budget.
Because that's going to cost the taxpayer plenty, isn't it?
The figures, I mean, we have been honest. I didn't accept the previous administration or had been entirely dishonest or entirely not open. You know, there was a lot of openness and transparency, especially towards the end of the last administration. And yeah, we did lay out and we did put it into public the size of the legacy funding deficit, and we did. And it's always been the case that the public has known how much is in the public sector pensions reserve. So yeah, after the budget, in the months after the budget, we'll begin the process of making sure every individual in the Isle of Man, especially those employed in the public sector, understands what all this might mean for them, and also what everybody understands what the who's sharing what part of the risk and who's sharing what part of the costs and all of that. And take your point completely. If what's making the Isle of Man public suspicious is that governments are not laying everything out on the table, I think we do understand that, and pensions is a good place to demonstrate that we understand that. And once we can share with you full information after the budget, I would hope we will begin a process which will take 2, 3, 4 years to address that legacy funding deficit, which will be informed with how things go in the economy, and which will be informed with how things go on government revenue and government finances, and which will be informed in what the Manx public decide in terms of what they want provided as public services and what they are happy not to have provided as public services. You know, it will emerge what that responsibility is quite soon after the budget. I'm sure we'll be able to engage on who's sharing what in terms of the risks and who's sharing what in terms of the contributions.
Another one, border security and threats to national security. Can you explain what we're talking about there? I guess cyber security.
Want me to take it?
Yeah, well, I'll let Chris go on the cyber security. That's I should imagine that's the bulk of where we're coming from on that side of things. It's happening all the time. Hackers are getting in and putting viruses into IT systems, government IT systems, and multi-corporate businesses are getting hacked on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Some of those issues are to do with things like the common travel area and things like the way that we interact with the Crown as a Crown dependency. So some of those functions are outside the direct, well, certainly they're in the influence of ministers of the Isle of Man, but we have to work in partnership with the people around them because of the nature of our island and also the issue that we're talking about. So specifically it's to do with terrorism, it's to do with money laundering and any other predicate offence for things like money laundering, but it's also potentially to do with migration and passenger transport movements and all of those other things. So it's a very, very complicated issue, and it relates to so many other areas of policy, and all we've laid out here is it's a dialogue that government needs to have inside itself with its partners outside the island and also thereafter with the public. So in the last few weeks there's been talk about investigatory powers, and there's been talk about single resident records and citizens databases. These are all connected matters, and I acknowledge that, and we acknowledge that the public is worried about these issues, but what I can see here today is, and absolutely sure the Manx public is that the reason why they might have concerns, or at least some people might have concerns, is acknowledged, recognised, and there will be dialogue about all of these things before policy develops, law develops.
Adrian mentioned national security. I'd seen that. Another thing I was wondering that I can't see was international aid. Is there any mention of that?
Well, the international aid is something that...
Sorry, it hasn't been reformed, has it?
Yeah, well, we're looking at potential new format for that at this moment in time. It was. We're not saying we're not going to be giving, so the amount of money that we currently give. So that's not the case. What we're looking for is coming up with a system which is cost effective. It was quite an expensive way of handing out money to various charities. It was tying up an awful lot of officer time, and we have restrictions on our officer time because obviously the amount of time that's having to go into Brexit with our external relationships team. So we're trying to come up with something that streamlines how we give the money to the various charities, but it certainly will be continuing.
And just to support that, just referring you to the actual document, pages 8 and 9, under the theme called Responsible Ireland, we do say that we will engage, participate internationally, will be respected internationally, and we make a specific commitment to international development on that page. So how we do that is to be worked out, but we don't want anybody to be running off thinking that we're going away from our commitment to maintaining international development.
Yeah.
So will there be a similar budget?
Yes. Also, you've got the small countries work that we do at the moment. That will be continuing as well. It's just because it's always been done one way doesn't mean to say that should be the way going forward. As I say, we found it's been an expensive time to administer the scheme, and we're just trying to streamline it. That's all it is. Nothing sinister.
No commitment to that 0.7% income.
Sorry?
No commitment to that 0.7%.
Not at this moment. Obviously, it's an area you want to strive to, and I think we need to look at the figures. When you look at how the formula has worked out, so it goes on GDP, but when you've got 0.10 corporation tax, your figures are skewed. So I think it's something going forward we will look at, but the current amount that we give, I can't see being reduced.
And to support that, that's the work for the next 3 months in two ways. Firstly, we have there a specific outcome described as maintaining commitment to international development. So we will have to work out the indicator that we're going to use for that, and we will publish that indicator quarterly. And secondly, as the Chief Minister's outlined, we then have to work out a mechanism of actually being a financially responsible government and an efficient government that's providing something worthwhile in the best possible way, and that's what the Chief Minister is describing in terms of international development. It's not necessarily the case for our government that we're going to do things the same as the previous government or even previous governments have done.
And off the back of that point, how much scope is there with some of these objectives to speak to the public about what they think and what they want? Because there is a feeling from a lot of people that we shouldn't be spending anywhere near this amount of money off Ireland when there is so much that needs to be done on Ireland. So is there going to be communication with the public to see what they actually want our money to be spent on?
Yes. No, but to be more frank and to be frank, it's a major piece of work for us in Cabinet Office about how we go about engaging, involving the public. I'm hesitant to say it again because Mr Derbyshire will pick me up and he'll have another headline that Chris Thomas is going to consult on consultation. But we haven't launched a consultation on we haven't launched a consultation on consultation. We're doing it more fundamentally than that. We're talking about our actual way of engaging with the public and involving the public in decisions. All sorts of things are on the table. Very impressed with the work that the officers are doing, the procurement that they're beginning to set up, and I'm absolutely can assure you that we will be engaging on that process of consultation. And the international development issue, we will have indicators. We will engage with the public on those indicators through time. And my gut reaction is if the public thinks that we should be focusing at home first, I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's what we don't decide in the near future. It could be that we sort out the world's issues the year after we've sorted out any issues that we identify home, because I think that would be a fair balance, but that's only my personal opinion, and that's for the debate to have with my colleagues and with the wider public and with all the stakeholders.
But if I could just add, when it comes to helping and charity, all serious countries should make financial aid to overseas. It's seen as being taking your responsibility and being an international world player, and if we want to be an international finance centre, we've got to show that we're taking our international responsibilities seriously.
Where's the island's first cultural centre going to be?
It's
St John's, isn't it?
Yeah, it's already there. It's St John's is the location opposite the Tynwald Fairground. The Canine legacy was used to purchase a building that's being opened in April, and the strategy for its use is being fully worked out, and so that's where it is.
Got them finally, unless anyone's got them. All being well, subject to ratification, it looks like we're going to be filming / taking a live feed of your policy being presented. How are you feeling about this new brave era of television cameras in Tynwald and possibly live pictures coming out?
I think if it enables the public to get a greater understanding of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, then I'm all for it.